Hi Math 54. This is the video for lesson 112, which is located on page 521 in your textbook and is scheduled for Monday, April 13th. Let's do a little bit of review before we jump into the lesson. Review. When we look at a fraction, the top number is called the numerator and the bottom number is called the denominator. Denominator and down both start with D, so denominator, down, and denominator and down both start with D, so that's how I remember the denominators on the bottom. We've reviewed that quite a few times, but I wanted to cover it one more time before we moved on. Okay, so this is review also. We have in the past done equivalent fractions. Remember, equivalent is another word for equal, so equal fractions. When we did equivalent fractions in the past, we have multiplied a fraction by 1. Remember, any number multiplied by 1 equals that number. So if 5 times 1 is 5, 100 times 1 is 100, and so on. So we'd multiply a fraction by a fraction that equals 1. Remember, 3 over 3, any fraction where the numerator and denominator are the same equals 1. So 3 over 3, or 3/3, is 1, 4/4 is 1, 8/8 is equal to 1. So we would multiply it by that to get an equivalent or equal fraction. That's what we've done in the past. That's not new. That's just to jog your memory, because we're going to do something very similar today. Okay, so now let me show a quick example of that. So if we had the fraction 2/5 to start out with, and we were told what is an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 10. Okay, I would have to look at my 5 and my 10 and say, what number did I multiply 5 by to get to 10? And I know that it is 2. So if I come to my numerator and I multiply my numerator by 2, I get 4. So I took 2/5 and multiplied it by 2 over 2, which we know 2 over 2 is equal to 1, and got an equal fraction of 4/10. Okay? So that's what we did to get an equivalent fraction or equal fraction. Today, it's almost like we're going to be doing the opposite of that. And many times we've talked about what is the opposite of multiplication. The opposite of multiplication is division. So today we're going to be using division to go from larger numbered fractions, larger numbers in the fraction, to smaller numbers in the fraction. Let me show you what that is. There's a word for that called reducing fractions. Okay, so today we're going to be reducing our fractions by dividing. Okay, we're going to be dividing the fraction by 1, or a fraction equal to 1, to get an equivalent equal fraction written with smaller numbers. So if I look at this, in the past we have multiplied and gone this way, right? We did 5 to 10. Now we're going to be going the opposite way. We're going to be given this fraction and be asked to go backwards, which is going to be to divide. Okay? So when we do that, our fraction gets written in smaller numbers. And so the 4 gets reduced to a 2. The 10 gets reduced to a 5. So let's look at how we do that. When our instructions say to reduce and write the reduced form of a fraction. So for example, we have 4/10. Now, if you can't come up with the number that they are both divided by immediately, that's okay. You can go and write their factors. Remember, a factor is the number you multiply together to get a product of 4. So for 4, I can multiply 1 times 4. I can multiply 2 times 2. So 1, 2, and 4 are factors of 4. 10, I can multiply 1 times 10 and 2 times 5 to get to 10. So these are factors. So what I did here is I wrote out the factors and then I found their common factor. Okay? their biggest common factor. So that's what I'm going to divide by. If you don't need to do this, skip it. Pretend it's not there. Don't let it confuse you. But I wanted you to understand where I'm getting my numbers, okay? If you do need to do this, please do. It may help you. So I know to reduce this, I have to divide, because I learned that reducing fractions, you divide them by a fraction that's equal to 1 to get an equal fraction written in smaller numbers. So let's look at this one. So I know I have to divide by 2 because 2 is divisible into 4 and it's divisible into 10, and it's the only one. Okay, it's the greatest and it's the only one. The largest and the only one. So I'm going to divide this by, remember, I'm going to divide it by 1. 2 over 2 is equal to 1, right? So let's do that. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Okay, so whereas up here I was multiplying to get to that equivalent fraction, now I'm going backwards and dividing. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Opposites. Reducing by dividing. Okay, let's look at some other examples. So I have the fraction 3/9. So I can write out my factors if I need to, or I can just look at it if I know, and know that I'm going to have to divide by, and what am I going to divide by? I'm going to divide by 3 over 3, which we know is equal to 1. Okay? Any number divided by 1 is that number, right? So that's why I'm dividing by 1, to get an equal fraction with smaller numbers in it. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. 9 divided by 3 is 3. My answer is 1/3. This is just where I did my factors. You do not have to do that if you understand how I got 3 as my answer. Okay, let's look down here. So 5/8. So this one, I was looking at and I'm going, I don't know what it can be divided by. So I did my factors, and I see they have no common factor except 1. So 5/8 cannot be reduced any lower because there's nothing it can be divided by to make these numbers smaller. So 5/8 stays the same. Not all fractions can be reduced any further. In fact, when it's only, the numbers are only divisible by 5, no. When the numbers are only divisible by 1, then it is at its lowest reduced fraction. Okay? So we're taking a larger fraction, dividing it by a fraction equal to 1 to get smaller numbers in our fraction, to get the smallest possible numbers. And we're calling it the reducing of fractions. Okay? The practice problems for this are on page 523 in your textbook. And there will be a video coming for lesson 113 soon. Bye.